Okay, day 92, and I corrected an error from yesterday that the littoral ship here, made by Austal and also Lockheed, have a gas turbine engine that has had all kinds of troubles. So if you haven't seen this, this is actually a very good episode. It's the wrap up from yesterday from day 91. But the key here is this progressive reporting or this self-informed reporting or this vetted reporting or this constant feedback loop to make sure that the story goes deeper and becomes more accurate as it goes and also kind of connects the dots. That's the key here. And I compared that to this woman who I had a discussion with, and you'll hear it in 94, the day 91 wrap up, who was from U.S. News and World Report, who literally a year later, and I call them press kids, literally a year later, she didn't know that the PP dossier was out. She didn't know about the factual inaccuracies of the PP dossier. She was saying even if there's 5% of it's true, and that gave the FBI a right to go in and investigate Donald Trump, that was all fine and good. So that was the shock of my whole time being in here in Washington, D.C., actually. And then we had other fake news come out from Huffington Post saying that it was somehow a conspiracy document that was written from these intelligence documents. Again, the author, having never seen it, is now convinced it's a conspiracy document, and now release the memo, the campaign on the internet for releasing that 4-page document from these folks who wanted to push out Fusion GPS's testimony with cold medicine. Now they think that's just a horrible idea, and it's being published by the Russians. The Russian bots are pushing out, release the memo. They're the ones pushing it out. It's compounding itself in terms of laughability. But anyway, what I found out about this, and the point I make in this piece is, by making a mistake, coming out and admitting it, and then coming back the next day with even more in-depth reporting leads to so much more learning rather than, oh, I'm going to wait for the 5,000 emails and I'll accept 15 right now for Uranium One, or I'm going to wait for the 10,000 Peter Strzok's messages. I'm going to just be happy with the 370 hand-picked ones that makes it look like an affair and not a shared Dropbox with all of Andy McCabe's other counterintelligence friends. These are the types of things that this form of reporting is so superior. And I'll give you an example. Lockheed and General Dynamics went to Congress and said this thing should cost $220 million, this littoral combat ship. It's cost $584 million, triple the cost. Again, it's a catamaran. It's not a sophisticated big ship. It's relatively small and simple in design, and most of it is cargo area. So you really wonder how you could get to $1 billion. And then I've read some articles that said we can't disclose how much it actually ended up costing because it would affect the competition between the two vendors. Really quite amazing. If you haven't seen this series that I did yesterday about nuclear power, I'm convinced, almost convinced now, that they deliberately made this cost 3 times the price so that they could farm it out to Australia and Austal to do pay-to-play through a third party in another country. This is just Uranium One all over again with Navy ships. And I'm convinced that nuclear power will eventually be put in here by the nuclear kids in the Navy, saying we should have went with a nuclear power plant to begin with. What were we thinking? We're having all kinds of problems with these gas turbine engines. But anyway, 55 of these things. Why would you accept even one if they were that bad in terms of the performance? So just kind of an interesting talk of smaller modular reactors from yesterday really led to a treasure trove here out at the Pacific Northwest Laboratory. This is out by where I live. This is out by Hanford Nuclear Reservation where they store radioactive waste. There's all sorts of work going into these smaller nuclear power plants. And what I ran across yesterday was, I said, hey, the military could start, they decommissioned all the armories in citizen areas and then moved them to these remote locations. Could be the 33 different weapons caching areas and training areas that the Muslim Brotherhood has. That's just kind of the front for these weapons caches, where they've kind of decommissioned armories, that they would want their own nuclear power. And sure enough, here it is. The Air Force has said exactly that. We wanted to evaluate the small nuclear power to keep the power going in case of an attack. I'm convinced when you see this article, you'll see how many designs there are for these small kind of cylinders that they plant directly into the ground, and it's underground and makes hardly any footprint, and that runs the whole nuclear facility. You can see they can be delivered on a rail car. This is also almost 10 years ago now, 9 years ago now, and you can see all the designs they're working on these smaller nuclear reactors. I'm sure the state of play is much further along here now. But here's Lawrence Livermore Nuclear Laboratory. These laboratories are working on these smaller designs, and again, releasing this information to the Chinese and to the Russians. We just talked to somebody who said that they were at Lawrence Livermore with all these Russian scientists. What's going on? This is Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell, the person who hired the Awans, is that Lawrence Livermore and Sandia National Labs are in his district, California 15. So it just makes you think that selling England by the pound wouldn't do to. Here's another, the cylinder kind of plant design, the fence post type design, and everything lives above it. You can't even see it. Here's Oregon State, similar type of design. This kind of like fence post or plant design, and very easily concealed. And again, deliverable by a rail car. It's almost like every nuclear lab is going to be matched up with somebody who has the Awans, which is really scary. It's far beyond the mistake in reporting yesterday on one item has led to this real treasure trove that you've got people like Eric Swalwell having two national labs bringing in all kinds of people from overseas to study and take our secrets, and then you've got the Awans with the 123 Dropbox with terabytes to Pakistan. Really quite stunning. It was the most fortuitous mistake, and I almost came away with saying, I need to make mistakes more often. I'm making mistakes too infrequently. This was the state of play 9 years ago with the smaller nuclear reactors, and it looks like all of the money being spent at these sites that are supposedly storing nuclear waste have turned into national laboratories where they're working on this technology and then farming it out for pay to play.